Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode 69. This is AFLW Week 9. Big week of women's football this weekend, or last weekend, and this weekend coming. So we're going to be reviewing all of last round 8 matches, all 9 of them, and then we'll be jumping into all the week 9 slash round 9 preview of all the 9 matches coming up this weekend. Huge weekend of football, lots of games to get through, so we won't muck around too much in the start, but as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Plenty of content coming out on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere. The podcast goes live twice a week on YouTube and Spotify, Mondays and Fridays. Mondays is AFLW, Friday is AFL Men's, so check all of that out. And plenty of other videos go live on the YouTube every week. So, yeah, as I said, like, comment, subscribe, join in the crew. We've gone past 60 subscribers on YouTube, so go hit that subscribe button. And if you're on Spotify, hit it as well. Wherever you are, hit it. And, yeah, let me know what you think of the content. Without any further ado, let's jump into round 8 football. Finally, we were down to 9 games a week. The condensed fixture is over, so it's just 2 more weeks now. This was the third last round before finals. First up, we had Carlton Bulldogs on Thursday night, and a little upset to start the round. Not the last upset of the weekend, but maybe one of the bigger ones. Bulldogs, they've won a couple games this year, but they'd been getting belted by quite a few teams, and their last couple of weeks before this, or their last couple of matches, had been quite poor. But they came out firing on Thursday night, got the win 61-28, 9 goals, 7-4, 4. First half was mainly pretty close. The Bulldogs kicked the last 2 before half time to go in 13 points up and just get a little bit of momentum. The third quarter was a bit of a stalemate, just 2 goals late, 1 for each team. And then the last quarter, the Doggies really turned it on, kicking 4 goals to 1. And yeah, really good performance from the Dogs, no doubt about it. Certainly in control for the whole second half. They didn't dominate it until the last few minutes, but on the scoreboard that is, but they certainly looked in control of the match most of the way through the second half especially. A look at the stats in this one. 42-20 inside 50s is a domination by the Doggies, and something that they haven't done really all year is dominate that inside 50s. They didn't dominate possessions as much and disposals. They actually had 2 less disposals for the match than Carlton, but just the ground control that they showed, they looked after the ball really well for them as well. 63.6 was their disposal efficiency, which is pretty solid for this Bulldogs team. They're very young, they're not the most experienced team, and they have kind of struggled at times this year, but they showed some really good signs in this one. They won clearances by +8, so really good out of the middle. Uncontested and contested footy was very similar for both teams, so no real winner there. But tackle count dominated by Bulldogs. 22 tackles inside 50 is really good performance from them as well. Really had the pressure on all over the ground, but even especially up the forward line. So great result for the Doggies to get this one. This was just their 3rd win of the year, so they haven't had a great season, but good return from them. Carlton, they're struggling. They're sitting now on 3 wins as well for the year, 3 and 6, both of these 2 teams. Bulldogs actually have the better percentage out of the 2, which is crazy when you look at how many thrashings the Doggies have copped. But they've won 2 games by decent margins now, so they beat Collingwood by about 42, I think, and now they've beaten Carlton by 33. So a couple really good results this season for the Doggies. We'll jump into the best players in this game, as we always do. We start with the multiple goal kickers. There was only one in this game. It was Sarah Hartwig for the Doggies. Kicked 2 in a good result with her 10 disposals. Best players starting with the Doggies in this one, because they are the winners. Isabel Pritchard, 25 touches and a goal, 7 tackles. Really good performance from her. Dominique Caruthas was solid, got plenty of touches. Jessica Fitzgerald also had plenty of the ball. As we said, Sarah Hartwig had two goals, 10 touches, 10 tackles. So really good performance in the forward line by her. Just solid performance across the board, really, from the Bulldogs here. Just controlled the game and in the end, get the points. Best players for Carlton in this one. Madeline Gurin had 20 touches, 9 tackles. Abby Mackay was good. She had 29 touches, 8 tackles. Other than that, I don't know if there was any outstanding performances worth noting. Other than them, there was plenty of players that played their role, but in the end, they just kind of got beaten in territory and beaten in disposal efficiency and lost the game quite comfortably in the end by 33 points. Did the Blue Baggers. We jump onto the second game. It was Friday night football, Port Adelaide St Kilda. And Port Adelaide continued their run of form. They win this one 7-5-47 to St Kilda's 5-2-32. Means St Kilda have won just one of their last 4 games? No, even worse than that, I think. I think they've only won 1 out of 6, maybe? 1 out of 6 they've won. So they're really struggling to get points on the board at the moment. And meanwhile, Port Adelaide have won 4 in a row. They're sitting 7th on the ladder, and they're 1 win away from finals. And got a chance this weekend to lock in a finals position there. Percentage is really healthy as well. So one more win would all but guarantee a spot in the finals. I mean, it depends on other results, but pretty much guarantees them a spot in the finals if they can win one more. So they get a really good chance this weekend to achieve that. So we'll see how that goes for them. But as we said, they kind of controlled this game. They dominated the first quarter. It was 31-6 at quarter time. Put it away in the first quarter. St Kilda kind of came back a little bit from that point onwards. They did win the last quarter. They did win the second quarter, St Kilda. But overall, that margin they gave them, 25 points at quarter time, was just too much in the end. And Port Adelaide just kind of looked the game down and won by 15 points in the end. And in all honesty, were the much better team. They had an extra 26 disposals. They had an extra 16 inside 50s. This game was just played in the midfield, really, between the two arcs. Both teams pretty low amount of inside 50s for the game. 39 for Port Adelaide is pretty solid. That's a good number, but 23 for St Kilda, pretty low. But they're not a team that really dominates the territory. St Kilda, full stop. And certainly over the last 6 weeks, they've really struggled in that area. Clearance-wise, Port Adelaide dominated this, 36-24. Most of that from stoppages, 31-20 from stoppage clearances. They controlled contested footy. They controlled uncontested football. They controlled the match in all facets, pretty much. Had a lot more shots. Never really looked like losing this one. 24 tackles inside 50, so like the Bulldogs, tackled really well in their forward line, and that led to a lot of scoring opportunities for the Port Adelaide Power. Look at the best players in this one. There was 3 multiple goal scorers. Abby Dowrick, Ashley Saint for the Port Adelaide Football Club, both kicked 2 goals each. And for St Kilda, Tiana Smith kicked 2 as well. Best players starting with Port Adelaide. Goody probably played her best game of her AFLW career so far. Having a really good season, no doubt about it. But this might have been her best one yet. 22 touches, 11 marks, 8 tackles, a couple clearances, 429 metres gained was really good. Matilda Schultz might just be the most improved player over the last month or so. Really starting to play some good football. Couple good games in a row. 22 touches, 30 hit-outs, 5 clearances. Really, really showing some good signs. As we said, Abby Dowry kicked a couple from her 18 touches, 10 tackles as well as 9 clearances. So she was doing everything. Ashley Saint kicked a couple. A lot of other role players for the Power. For St Kilda, best players, they don't really have anyone that stands out, in all honesty. Their leading disposal getter was 17. They had Lambert and McDonald both having 17 touches. Deanna Smith had 12 touches, 10 tackles and 2 goals, as we said, so she probably was their best player. But overall, I feel like they were just kind of dominated across the ground, and it shows when you look at the best players. The best probably 3 or 4 players, or at least 4 out of the top 5 were Port Adelaide players. So they did control this one, and they got the points. We move on to Saturday football. We go first up to Hawthorn v GWS. Hawthorn, all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, it's been building, but now they are certainly one of the premiership fancies, I guess. They're sitting in the markets, third in premiership betting at the moment, only behind Kangaroos Adelaide. So their season's flying. They haven't lost for a long time now. They're looking really good, and they're putting really good scores on the board. They've only scored less than 9 goals 3 times this year, and they still managed to win 2 of those. So they're really showing good signs offensively and also defensively, only conceding 24 points here. Some really good signs. 9 goals, 761 to 3,624. First half was an absolute slog for both teams, no doubt about it. 2 goals each in the first quarter, 0-3 for Hawthorn to 0-0 in the second quarter. Had it as a 1-point margin at half time, and we've about 3 or 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. Hawthorn were only a kick in front. I think it was 7 or 8 points with a couple minutes to go in that third quarter. Hawthorn then managed 2 goals late in that third quarter, which kind of just gave them a little bit of momentum going into the last quarter, which they made use of all the way through. They ended up kicking 4 goals too in that last quarter, just to extend that margin out to 37 points in the end. But GWS was certainly in this most of the way. It was a pretty solid performance, in all honesty, from the Giants. They're certainly not a team that's really played that well this year. They're certainly a long way off Hawthorn based on what we've seen this year. But it wasn't their worst showing. They were in the game most of the way. It was just, I guess, that second half. Hawthorn have been a very good second half team all year, and that was shown again here. They really got it done when it mattered most. A look at the stats in this one. Hawthorn dominated pretty much across the board. Plus 32 disposals, plus 20 inside 50s. GWS used the ball pretty well, but they just weren't getting enough of the football. Clearances 38 to 22 for Hawthorn, so a domination there. Contested footy was dominated by Hawthorn. Uncontested footy was pretty level. And tackle count 85 to 74 in favour of the Hawks. So overall, I mean, Hawthorn were by far the better team. GWS hung around, stayed in it, sort of, in a way, even though they were probably dominated across the ground most of the way through this one. But in the end, the better team got the points. Multiple goal scorers. There was actually quite a few in this one. More than most, I guess. For Hawthorn, Gilroy kicked 3, and then Hipwell and Baskaran both kicked 2 each. And for the GWS Giants, Tani Evans kicked 2 goals. Best players, we'll start with the Hawks, as we always start with the winning team. Emily Bates had a lot of the football here. 34 touches and a goal, 7 tackles, 8 clearances. I don't know why I paused before I started talking about her, but we'll just move on. 443 metres gained. Really good performance across the board. Has to be best on ground. In all honesty, you'd have to think. It's hard to see a world where she doesn't get best on ground in that one. Was just a really, really solid performance from the midfielder. Tilly Lucas-Rod had a great game. 23 touches, 8 tackles as well. And then Gilroy, who kicked 3 from 17 touches. Fleming, 20 touches and a goal. Lucy Wales, I think, has been really good in the ruck all year round. This was no exception. So really, really outstanding performance. also worth noting, Breed had 11 clearances to lead the way for the match. For GWS, Parker had 27 touches, 8 tackles, 5 clearances. Was solid performance from her. Alicia Dowd, as a ruckman, first year ruckman, has been really good so far. Alicia Eva was solid as well, but overall, in the end, it was mainly dominated in the stats department and in the end, the scoreboard by Hawthorn. Next up, we had Sydney Gold Coast in a battle of bottom 4 teams at the moment, and in all honesty, it's probably they're both going to stay in the bottom 4, you'd probably think. Sydney have had a rough year. They won their first game, and since then they've only had one success since that point, so not a real great season for them. Gold Coast up to this point hadn't won a game. They had one draw, obviously, in like week 2, I think it was. But they get their first win, which was huge for them. Gets them off the bottom of the ladder, puts them 17th. And yeah, just a well-earned win. Both teams could say that they deserve this one. In the end, it goes to the team that kicked straighter in the end. 6-10-46 for Sydney, 7-8-50 for the Gold Coast Suns. Gold Coast kind of led the game pretty much the whole way. Sydney did hit the front halfway through the last quarter. But Gold Coast managed to kick the last goal of the game, which gave them the lead through Jacqueline Dupie. Sorry, I don't know how to say her name. Anyway, moving on. They got the win by 4 points in the end in a real big arm wrestle. In the end, Sydney had one extra inside 50 for the match compared to Gold Coast. So, yeah, they had some poor kicking, and that probably hurt them, in all honesty. Plus 20 disposals. They had their chances, Sydney, in this one, but Gold Coast were more accurate and got the win. Sydney won the clearances. They won uncontested football. They only managed to lead for 7 minutes of this match, and it kind of shows, I guess. Tackles 73-54 in favour of Sydney. So I think a lot of stats kind of were won by Sydney, except for the important ones, and that's on the main important one is on the scoreboard. Goal kickers, 3 multiple goal scorers, 2 for Gold Coast, Tara Bohana and Jacqueline Dupie, including the game winner with 2 each. And for Sydney, Rebecca Privtelli gets 2 as well. Where are we now? Best players for Gold Coast. As always, Charlie Rowbottom was up there, 22 touches, 8 tackles, 5 clearances. I think Claudia Whitford, was probably best on ground. She had 22 touches, 10 clearances and a goal. Really good performance from her. Dupie kicked 2. Bella was good in the ruck for Gold Coast. Plenty of other players all played their role. Meanwhile, for Sydney, best players, a couple people kicked goals and had decent touches in Hamilton, McElvoy. Privatelli had 2 goals from 11 touches. Sophia Hurley was their best ball winner with 21 touches. But in the end, Gold Coast were the better team where it mattered. And even though Sydney had plenty of players that played their role pretty well, they just, in the end, couldn't convert it into scores. Moving on to the next game. This was maybe one of the more important games of the round. Melbourne playing for their spot in finals. If they lose any games, they're done. They need to win that one that they won on the weekend against Richmond. They also need to win their next 2. So a good performance from them to get the win. It's an interesting game. Both teams, just kind of like the Sydney Gold Coast one, probably think they were the better team in this game. And you could probably make an argument for either team to have won. Melbourne end up winning at 8-3-51, and Richmond kicked poorly, not for the first time. They've kind of struggled in front of goal multiple times this year. They kicked 5 goals, 8-38. Demons win it by 13 points. looked like it was going to be a lot more than that. With a few minutes to go, but Richmond kicked the last 3 of the game just to bring it back a little bit. They should not have been as far back as they were, though. They will be kicking themselves for letting Melbourne get away by so much early in that last quarter. But even to be down at three-quarter time by 16 points was probably pretty disappointing for the Tigers, who really are trying to get their way into the top 4. If they had have won this game, they would be, at worst, level with 3rd and 4th, just behind them on percentage, but maybe, depending how much they won by, could have been right there with the Brisbane Lions. So that might put a dent in their chances for top 4. Probably does. They would need to win both their last 2 games and hope that Brisbane or Adelaide lose at least one, and probably get thumped in that loss. But yeah, that's the way it goes. Meanwhile, Melbourne, they're now technically equal 8th. Well, technically equal 7th. Just down on percentage. Their percentage is still terrible. But they've won 4 in a row. Fought their way back into the season. They had a really rough start, but their percentage is still absolutely killer for them. And it's not going to get easy because they've got Hawthorn this week. So they pretty much need to win both games, I would say, to guarantee a spot in the finals. It's not going to be easy. If they win one, technically they could make it. They would need a lot of luck, though, so they may need 2 wins here. And, yeah, they did what they needed to, though, in this one. They got the 4 points. It was a pretty tight game across the board. Both teams dead level on disposals, 234 apiece. Inside 50s was 35 for Melbourne, 36 for Richmond, so very close in that regard. Clearances were pretty close, 33 to 29 in favour of Melbourne. Richmond did do well in contested possessions, winning that by 13. Marks went the way of Melbourne, but only by 2. Tackling dominated by Melbourne, 87 to 66. As I said, argument for either team to have won this, but Melbourne, being up by 30 points with about 10 minutes to go, really controlled the scoreboard all the way through this and get the 4 points. Best players, multiple goal scorers, you know how it is. 3 multiple goal scorers in this one. For Melbourne, Alyssa Bannon kicked 4 goals. 4 goals too, so could have been an absolute day out. And Georgia Gall kicked 2 as well. For Richmond, Caitlin Garasia kicked 3 goals, 1 from her 8 disposals. Best players, starting with Melbourne, Cade Hoare continued her fabulous run of form. She's been really good recently. Had 22 touches, 10 tackles, 6 clearances. Really good performance. Eliza McNamara was good with 16 touches. Shelley Heath laid 14 tackles, really good performance. Olivia Purcell had 24 touches as well. Meanwhile, for the Richmond Tigers, Ellie Sharon was probably their best player, maybe best on ground. 30 touches and a goal, 7 tackles, 10 clearances, 604 metres gained. Just an absolute, really good performance from her. From start to finish, had a lot of it, used it well. Just a good performance. Monique Conti, as always, was really good. 27 touches, 8 tackles. Poppy Kelly was solid in the ruck. But in the end, Melbourne get the points. And a much needed win for them. Next up, Saturday night football. It was the derby over in the West. West Coast Eagles v the Fremantle Dockers. Fremantle had a bit of a rough run. They'd lost 2 games in a row, both at home. So this was an important game for them, and they got away with a win, 5-5, 35 to 1-6, 12 for the Eagles, who showed some good signs early in the season. They've just got a little bit more development, I think, to get through before they're a genuine chance in finals and pushing for finals. They're not going to make finals now. They with 2 weeks to go, they're a game plus a lot of percentage out, so they would need basically a miracle to get there, which just isn't going to happen. But they've had a good season nonetheless. Certainly a big improvement on what they showed last year. So signs are positive for them. But Fremantle, they're looking all right. You take out those couple bad losses, one against Hawthorn, which is forgivable over at their home ground, but the Carlton loss was a bad one for them, no doubt about it. If they had have won that, they would be right now 5th on the ladder and equal in with 3rd and 4th on points and a chance for top 4 still, whereas now they're not really a chance for top 4 anymore. They would need teams to fall over in front of them, but they've all but guaranteed themselves a spot in the finals. So that's step 1, I guess, making finals. This one, West Coast actually played really well around the ground. They just couldn't convert it into good opportunities, and then converting those opportunities that they did create, they just couldn't do either. As I said, 1 goal 6 is not great in front of goals, but they actually had an extra inside 50. They had an extra 12 disposals in this one. Fremantle did dominate the clearance game by +10, but Eagles dominated contested football. They won uncontested football. They turned it over less than Fremantle. So the signs were really positive for the Eagles in this one, but Fremantle's a little bit more experienced team, probably a little bit more confidence going into this one, just slightly better team in the end and got the job done. 98 tackles for the Dockers, 79 for the Eagles. Look at the best players in this one. Only the one multiple goal scorer, and that was for Fremantle. Obviously, West Coast only kicked 1 goal for the game, but the multiple goal scorer for the Dockers was Gabby Beedewag Webster. She kicked 2 goals, 1. Best players, I think, clearly best on ground was Mim Strom in the ruck. Absolute domination. 15 touches, 7 tackles, 48 hit-outs, 3 clearances, really good. Aisling McCarthy was good, 20 touches, 11 tackles. Gabriella Newton was good as well with 12 tackles and 17 touches. And then a lot of role players. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, Isabella Lewis, 26 touches, was good. Alison Drennan had 12 tackles, was good as well. And then just a lot of role players. So I think overall Fremantle were, I'm not going to say clearly better team, but I think they just had that better top end of the match in terms of players, and that's what got them over the line in this one. That's all of Saturday football. We move on to Sunday. There was 3 games on Sunday. We started off with Geelong Brisbane, and Geelong's season was and still is hanging by a thread. Technically, they can make finals. They are a game and a half outside the 8. They would need to win both games and basically get a miracle with teams falling over in front of them. I can't see it happening, but they did what they needed to on the weekend, and they certainly have a chance because they play West Coast this week, which they should arguably win. So even though their season's just hanging on, this was a really good win. Probably kicking themselves for allowing themselves to fall this far behind the ledger, I guess, with some bad losses earlier in the year, but this was a really good performance on Sunday afternoon. They win at 7-5-47 to Brisbane's 5-7-37. Kicked away in the first quarter, kicked the first 3 goals of the match, and then kind of just held that margin most of the way through. Brisbane did kick the last couple goals of the game, and with a few minutes to go, maybe gave a little bit of a scare, but in the end, Geelong were just in control of it most of the way. Inside 50 count was +10 for Geelong, even though Brisbane had more of the ball. They just didn't control the ball very well, turned it over a bit. Not their most clean performance, I don't think, from the Lions. Clearances were pretty level, +2 for Brisbane. +15 contested possessions and +8 uncontested possessions in the favour of Brisbane. What else have we got that's important here? Poor kicking in front of goal hurt Brisbane for sure. Tackle count was pretty level. Moving on to the best players. 3 multiple goal kickers for Geelong, Shelley Scott and Aisling Maloney, both kicking 2 each. Meanwhile, for Brisbane, Orla O'Dwyer kicked 2 goals. Best players, starting with Geelong as the winning team. Nina Morrison, really good game, 24 touches and a goal. Georgie Prespakis, 20 touches, 10 tackles, 10 clearances. Really good game. That's a triple-double. Julia Crockett-Grills was good as well, 20 touches. 2 goals, as I said, for Maloney from 13 touches and 6 tackles. Meanwhile, for Brisbane, it's hard to know who was clearly best for them. Charlotte Mullins, probably 18 touches and a goal, was good. Ali Anderson had a bit of it, 22 touches. But overall, they just didn't control the game very well compared to what they normally do, the Lions here. It was an away game for them. They have been in some really good form outside of round 1, so I think we forgive this one, put it down to Geelong just got them on the day, and expect to see Brisbane bounce back this weekend. Next up is Essendon North Melbourne. I thought this might have been a little bit closer. Essendon had been showing some good form, but the Roos are just flying. There's no doubt about it. They're the team to beat at the moment this year. They are, I would say, a couple goals clear of everybody else at the minute. They win it by 51 points in an outstanding performance. Never looked like losing. 3 goals to 0 in the first quarter, another 3 goals to 0 in the second quarter. Both teams went goalless in the third, and Essendon finally got their first goal 7 minutes into the last quarter. It was their only goal, and yeah, really just dominant performance. I look at the stats in this one: 40-17 inside 50. So the ground was just controlled by North Melbourne. Plus 24 disposals, plus 13 clearances, 5-1 in centre clearances. So the Bombers just couldn't get it out of the centre. Contested footy dominated, plus 21 by the Kangaroos, plus 6 uncontested footy. Turnovers were dead level, but when you consider the fact that North Melbourne had so much more of the ball, that's a good result for North Melbourne. 82-62 tackles, so really just pretty much everything was just controlled in this game by North Melbourne, which is what they've been doing to teams week in, week out over the last, certainly, actually every week this year. Outside of their one draw, they've pretty much done it to everyone. 2 multiple goal scorers in this one. Kate Sherlaw for Kangaroos kicked 3, and Talia Randall, also for the Kangaroos, kicked 2. Best players for Kangaroos, as always, shared it around a lot actually, a bit more than normal. No clear standout. I'd say Jasmine Garner probably best on ground, 24 touches and a goal. Was really good. But there's plenty of other Kangaroos that also did well. Riddell had 23 touches, 6 tackles, 5 clearances. Mia King was good. Emma King was also good in the ruck. Amy Smith, as I said, Sherlaw kicked 3 goals from 10 touches. Just a real well-rounded game from the Kangaroos. Meanwhile, wow, I'm losing my words. For the Bombers, Madison Gay, 30 touches, leading ball winner on the ground, 541 metres gained, tried it hard out. Prespakis for the Bombers, 29 touches as well. So they had players winning plenty of the football, but in the end, it was just not able to get the ground, any control into the ground, and yeah, ended up losing by 51 points. Final game of the round, Collingwood Adelaide. Collingwood dropped to the bottom of the ladder this weekend. Adelaide get a solid win, which puts them 3rd on the ladder, thanks to the Brisbane Lions loss. And with 2 weeks to go, there's still technically a chance to get top 2, although it's not going to be easy because they do play the top of the ladder Kangaroos this weekend. This game was never really in doubt. It was 2 goals, 13-0-0 at quarter time. By 3-quarter time, that had gone to 4-7-0-1, so they were 30 points up at 3-quarter time. And then kicked away a little bit more, even though Collingwood managed to finally kick a couple goals in that last quarter. Look at the stats in this one, dominated. Adelaide were, it's probably 2nd or 3rd best team in Adelaide versus the worst or 2nd worst team in the AFL this year. AFLW? Got it the wrong way around, you know what I mean. So it was never expected to be close, and it certainly wasn't. Plus 39 disposals in favour of Adelaide, plus 22 inside 50s. Ball use was good by Adelaide, plus 22 clearances, so dominated it out of the middle. 7-2 centre clearances, 31-14 stoppage clearances, plus 33 contested possessions, plus 17 uncontested. Just controlled every facet of this match, did the Crows, in what was a good, well-rounded win. Just what they needed. They're showing some really good form. They're flying along. They lost a couple games through that middle part of the season. I wouldn't be too worried about that. I think they're probably still... the way I see it at the moment is North Melbourne clear top, then Hawthorn, Adelaide, Brisbane all fighting for that second best team and all really close. Then Richmond, Fremantle, which is what the ladder says, and then a whole host of teams in that next rung. With probably Melbourne and Geelong the best two of them, but they just, for whatever reason, let themselves down at the start of the season. But back into this game, look at the players, the best players of the match. Two multiple goal scorers, both for the Crows. Taylor Levy and Caitlin Gould. Both kicked 3 goals. Best players. We say it week in, week out. Ebony Marinoff, another dominant performance from her. 36 touches, 7 tackles, 8 clearances, 645 metres gained, and another goal assist to boot. Anne Hatchard, one of her... she's always good. Arguably one of her best games of the year. 28 touches and a goal, 6 clearances. Caitlin Gould, as we said, kicked 3 goals from her 14 touches. And then pretty much a whole host of other players that all played really well. They did clearly play really well, everyone pretty much for Adelaide. Best players for Collingwood, Sarah Rowe has had a good year this year. She's improved on what she's shown previously. 25 touches, really, really good. Lucy Cronin is by far their best first year player and probably their most promising talent. She was good with 16 touches. As a backman, has been really good. Tony White was good, as always, tackling really hard. That's what she comes in and that's what she does every week. Ruby Schleiser was okay, but in the end, it was just a game that was controlled by Adelaide, and we kind of expected it to be that way, in all honesty. A look at how my tips went on the weekend. We started poorly. We got Carlton Bulldogs wrong. We then got a couple right through Port Adelaide and Hawthorn both winning. Sydney went down to Gold Coast in a little bit of a surprise. Melbourne really showed up against Richmond and got that win, so we got that one wrong as well. Fremantle we got right. Geelong upset Brisbane, so we got that wrong, and then we finished with the probably 2 easy ones in North Melbourne, Adelaide, which leaves us with 5 out of 9 for the week. Slightly down on what our overall season is, but pretty solid in the end. 55 out of 80 for the year is pretty good. It's not terrible. Could be better. This week wasn't great. We've had a couple other weeks that were quite disappointing, but overall not too bad. We'll jump now into the this weekend's football. There's another 9 games happening this weekend. First up, Hawthorn Melbourne. Actually, in all honesty, Thursday night and Friday night games are both going to be absolute rippers this weekend, so tune into them because you won't regret it. There's no doubt about it. They're, in my opinion, the best 2 games of the weekend. So tune in. Hawthorn, Melbourne, Thursday night football. Should be a cracker. Hawthorn win it. They pretty much almost seal the top 2 spot, which is crazy to think. They're going really well. Also would pretty much seal the McClellan Trophy if they were to win it. Meanwhile, Melbourne, they're fighting for their survival this year. They win it. They keep themselves alive in the season. A loss pretty much effectively eliminates them. But they do have Collingwood in the final week, so a potential percentage boosting win there. So they need to go out and they need to beat Hawthorn. It's not going to be easy, but they're showing some better signs recently. Melbourne Friday night is probably the two of the better teams. You could argue Hawthorn are in there and Brisbane are also in there, but Adelaide North Melbourne should be an absolute cracker. Third versus first. North are going in heavy favourites, which isn't that surprising. No one's got close to them really for a while. But Adelaide will be going in with a little bit of hope. They've got some good players, and it is a home game for them. So I would like to see a really close game, as a lot of people would in this one on Friday night. North win it, they seal top spot basically. Not officially, but depending on the Hawthorn game, it could. Next up, we have some Saturday games. We have 4 on Saturday, as we do every week. That's not a condensed fixture week. We start with GWS Fremantle. GWS struggling this year. Fremantle not flying, they'd lost 2 in a row, but they won last week against the Eagles. They're back in winning form. They're 6th on the ladder. They win this. They've pretty much already sealed finals, not officially, because if they lost both their games, it could spell disaster, just like their men's team, which they would really be hoping doesn't happen. They do host the Bulldogs in the last round though, so I can't see them losing both games. And their percentage is clearly better than any team that's fighting them from below, so they should be fine, win or lose here, but I'd expect them to go out and win this one. Gold Coast, Port Adelaide. Gold Coast finally got their first win of the year. Port Adelaide 4 wins in a row going into this one. They're a game behind Fremantle. They need to win at least one. They probably want to win both. This isn't the toughest game, Gold Coast here. They should back themselves in, and they finish with GWS. So Port Adelaide could well go into finals, 6 wins in a row, sitting somewhere around 6th or 7th on the ladder, maybe 5th if they do well enough. So some positive signs for Port, especially if they can get the win this week. West Coast Geelong is Saturday evening game. Geelong need to win this if they want any hope of making finals, but in order to make finals they need multiple teams to fail both weeks, and it's unlikely. They definitely would need Essendon and Melbourne to lose both games, which is possible, but they'll need some luck. Probably should win this one, I think. West Coast have been better this year, but I feel like their run's just kind of fallen away a little bit of late, but we'll see what happens there. Final game of Saturday is Essendon Richmond. Massive game for both teams. Essendon win it. They can not guarantee themselves in finals, but keep their finals alive. Whereas if they lose this one, maybe that's the end of their season. They play Carlton in the last round, so it's an easily winnable game to finish the year. But a loss this week will certainly make it more difficult, because they'll probably drop outside of the 8, depending on other results, of course. Whereas Richmond, their top 4 chances might be gone after losing this weekend, but they can certainly still finish 5th or 6th quite comfortably. They just need to win one of these last 2 weeks, so they either need to beat the Bombers here or Hawthorn in the final week, so they'll definitely rather not leave that to the Hawthorn Hawks in the last week, because that would be a tough game for them. So they'll be going out to try and win this one for sure. That's all of Saturday night football. We jump on to Sunday football. First up, we have the Bulldogs St Kilda. I don't think either team is going to make finals. Technically, St Kilda can. Their season has fallen away a little bit of late, though. They should win this one, in all honesty. Even though Bulldogs played really well on the weekend, got a good win, I can't see them doing it here. Whereas St Kilda, their season's fallen away after winning their first 3 games for the year, but they should be too good for the Bulldogs. But it will probably leave them a game short, in all honesty, of making finals, especially when you consider they play Brisbane in the final round, which won't be an easy game. Collingwood Carlton, game that means not a lot. Bottom of the ladder Collingwood, they could get themselves off the bottom of the ladder with a win here. This will probably be their last chance to get their second win of the year because they finished the year against Melbourne, which I don't see them winning. So a tough one. Carlton, their season started pretty okay. Their percentage is quite horrible, but as is Collingwood's. Are the two worst percentage teams in the AFL this year. AFLW, sorry. I think Carlton will be too good, but both teams really struggling, in all honesty. Final game of the round, Brisbane-Sydney. Brisbane should be way too strong. Sydney's really struggling. Injuries have hit them hard, there's no doubt about it. They've got plenty of excuses as to why they've dropped so far this year, but they should not be able to beat Brisbane, I wouldn't imagine, in this one. A look at my tips for this weekend. We're going Melbourne in a little bit of an upset against Hawthorn. I think Melbourne just have so much to play for here. I know Hawthorn are flying, but I'm gonna back in the Demons with a lot to play for in this one, and their form's pretty good too. North Melbourne should be. This will be a really good game. I hope to see Adelaide take it to North Melbourne because otherwise the season could be effectively over because North Melbourne are just that good. GWS Fremantle, I think Fremantle should be too strong there. Port Adelaide should be too good for Gold Coast. Their form's really good. And Gold Coast just maybe a tier below the Power at the moment. Geelong, I think, will go over to the West and beat the Eagles, who started the season really well, but just not quite holding on at the moment. Richmond, I think they're the better team out of them and Essendon, but poor kicking in front of goals hurt them quite a lot, so we'll see what happens here. Essendon fighting for their season. Bulldogs, St Kilda. St Kilda should be too strong, even though their form is quite bad of late. I think they should be too good for the Bulldogs. Collingwood, Carlton. Carlton should be too good as well. Collingwood aren't great. They're really not great. Carlton aren't much better, but they should be better. And then the final game, Brisbane, should be too strong for Sydney, in my opinion. One final thing to look at before we wrap up, and that's the ladder after 9 matches, 8 rounds of the AFLW season. Kangaroos, clear top of the ladder, clear best team in the competition. Next up, Hawthorn, only half a game behind them, and technically still a chance to finish top of the ladder if they win both their games. Don't have the easiest run home, but we'll see how that plays. Neither did the Kangaroos, in all honesty. Adelaide this week will be a tough one. Adelaide third on the ladder. They'll be wanting a home final week 1, so in order to do that, they will probably have to beat Kangaroos this week and hope for some luck. Brisbane fourth on the ladder. The percentage is a fair way below the top 3 teams, mainly due to round 1 where they got pumped by the Kangaroos. But they should finish top 4 unless something drastic happens in these last 2 weeks. So top 4, but if they have to play Kangaroos week 1 of the finals, that will be a tough draw for them. Richmond 5th, Fremantle 6th, both on 6 wins. Should be enough for finals for both of them. Certainly Richmond with their high percentage, but they'll both be wanting to win both games to potentially get them into the top 4, depending on what happens above them, but also to lock in that home final week 1, which could be crucial. 7th is Port Adelaide, playing really good football, won their last 4. Essendon, they're sitting 8th on the ladder. They lost last week, and then they finished with a couple tough ones, so they'll be wanting to beat Richmond here. Melbourne 9th, flying home, won their last 4. Their percentage is still terrible, but they're a chance. You never know. St Kilda 10th, their season's fallen away. I don't see a world where they finish in the top 8. West Coast, same for them. I just don't see a world where they can do it. Geelong would need a miracle. They'd need to win both games and get some luck above them. So I'd say that's probably the end of teams. Well, that is the end of teams that are mathematically a chance. In all honesty, I think it's down to 9. I think it's the top 9 down to Melbourne. Then Geelong maybe would be a chance, the next best chance out of them. I just don't see St Kilda doing it. I don't think they've been good enough this year, and they've got Brisbane in round 10, so it's not going to be easy. Then the rest of the teams, Bulldogs, I mean, they've won 3 games. They've been flogged a few times this year, but they've also got a couple good wins. Their season's not a disaster. Carlton, they haven't shown much this year. They have got 3 wins, but their season hasn't been great. Sydney, injuries have ruined them, but still been pretty bad. GWS are a fair way off the pace. Gold Coast finally got their win on the weekend, but their season hasn't been great. And Collingwood have been atrocious and sit bottom of the ladder. That's everything we have for you this week on All Aussie Rules. That's episode 69 for season 2024. That's AFLW week 9. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Podcast goes live twice a week. Mondays for AFLW, Fridays for AFL Men's. I appreciate you all for being here. Jump in the comments below and let me know what you think of the AFLW this season. Plenty more content coming on YouTube, on Twitter /X, on Facebook. I don't really use Instagram, TikTok, you name it. We got it. Check it all out. All Aussie Rules everywhere. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday with another podcast episode where we'll be ranking the top 50 players of the AFL men's season. So check that out. Thanks for tuning in. Catch us on the next one.